The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., May 22, 2024. I hereby appoint the Honorable Chuck Edwards to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 9th, 2024, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with time equally allocated between the parties and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip, limited to 5 minutes. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Espaillat, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through recent confirmed reports, we now know that after January 6, 2021, the Capitol insurrection, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito flew an upside-down American flag in front of his home for several days. This is just the latest brazen act by an out-of-control, extreme MAGA justice whose conduct is directly responsible for current opinion on the Supreme Court being at record lows. The inverted flag was a well-known symbol flown by far-right extreme MAGA activists in early 2021. Extremists who believe that the former president's nonsensical election lie and who supported the goals of the January 6th assault on this body and our democracy. Federal judges cannot make political displays, and Alito is a Supreme Court justice. He knew exactly what he was doing when he expressed solidarity with January 6 criminals. To quote Esmeralda Santiago, "Tell me who you walk with, and I tell you who you are." Time and time again, Alito has shown us who he is, a far-right extreme MAGA ideologue who's anything but impartial with regards to justice. In 2022, Alito followed the directives of the former president and the far-right extreme MAGA camp to defy the will of the American people and 50 years of legal precedent by writing the decision to reverse Roe versus Wade. Along with his fellow extreme MAGA justice, Clarence Thomas, Justice Alito has routinely failed to report large luxury gifts paid for by some of his friends, private flights, and other payments to him and his family by wealthy far-right extremists. Worst of all, Justice Alito has also openly failed to recuse himself from any of the several January 6 related cases currently before the Supreme Court. And his bias is clearly showing. During last month's oral argument before the Supreme Court in the Donald Trump election interference case, Alito cozied up to Trump's absurd legal argument that past presidents are completely immune from criminal prosecution. You should recuse yourself. In last month's oral argument in a separate case involving charges against the January 6 Capitol insurrectionists, Alito revealed his view that prosecutors may have gone too far by daring to charge these defendants. You should recuse yourself. Justice Alito is someone who will do everything in his power to make sure Donald Trump and the January 6 insurrectionists evade prosecution and accountability for their crimes. For the sake of our democracy, Justice Alito must immediately recuse himself from all and any January 6 related cases before the Supreme Court. Justice Alito's behavior also underscores the need for Congress to immediately pass H.R. 926, the Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act. With H.R. 926, Supreme Court justices like Samuel Alito will finally be held subject to the same ethics and recusal standards as other federal judges in matters that are meaningful and enforceable. Until this occurred, Justice Alito and his insurrectionist worldview will continue to dominate our highest court, representing a threat not just to the rule of law, but also to American democracy itself. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair would remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities towards presumptive nominees for the office of president and to direct their remarks to the chair. With that, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Captain David Robert Whitty for his exceptional service to Arkansas's 4th Congressional District and to extend my heartfelt congratulations on his upcoming new role with the Arkansas Air National Guard as chaplain for the 189th Air Wing at Little Rock Air Force Base. David has been an invaluable member of my team for nearly a decade, demonstrating his dedication and commitment to public service. He currently serves as my Deputy District Director and Military and Veterans Affairs Representative, as well as the Assistant Pastor at Grace Lutheran Church in Little Rock, and as chaplain for the 777th Aviation Support Battalion for the Arkansas Army National Guard, all roles in which he has excelled. Since 2015, he has played a crucial role in the Service Academy nomination process for Arkansas students and assisted thousands of his fellow veterans, helping them navigate complex casework and ensuring they receive the support they deserve. His work has not only benefited those individuals, but has also had a significant impact on Arkansas's 4th Congressional District. David holds an impressive resume with an undergraduate degree from Concordia University and master's degrees from the University of Arkansas Little Rock and Liberty University. He also shares my love for the great outdoors and loves visiting our national parks, as you can see pictured here with his lovely wife, Megan, and their 4 children, Milo, Ike, Ames, and Etta. It's been a pleasure getting to know David and watching his family grow over the past 10 years, and I look forward to many more of continued friendship. While his absence from our office will be greatly felt, we wish David well on this next endeavor of his service to our country. He will undoubtedly make a positive and faithful impact in his new capacity with the Arkansas Air National Guard. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes.
Without objection.
There we go. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Marisela Garcia, whose distinguished career we celebrate today. Marisela will soon retire as the CEO of Gads Hill Center after 12 years of transformative impact. A fellow Guatemalteca, Chapina, Ms. Garcia immigrated to the U.S. in the 1980s seeking refuge from the Civil War. In our country, Garcia founded Casa Guatemala to support newly arrived refugees and co-founded Women for Guatemala to build solidarity among women in the U.S. and Guatemala. Marisela's impact has been felt across the state of Illinois. In addition to her years at Gads Hill Center, she has led the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights and the Latino Policy Forum. Her work has empowered countless families, especially Black, Brown, and immigrant families, providing them with the education, the resources, and hope. On behalf of Illinois 3rd Congressional District, the Guatemalan community in my district, it is my great honor to commend Marisela Garcia for her exceptional leadership. Su legado nos recuerda la fuerza, la resiliencia y las contribuciones de los inmigrantes a la hora de forjar un futuro mejor. Gracias, Marisela. Congratulations. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Debbie Resnick for 30 years of distinguished service to our communities, especially working to address homelessness. It is well known that Debbie has a standout philanthropic career. She has changed systems, strengthened sectors, and launched life-changing programs. What is lesser known is her legacy as a champion for young leaders. I met Debbie at the age of 19, having just been promoted to a leadership position in a Chicago nonprofit. And she made a commitment to me then to support me that day and has honored it every single day since. 21 years later, I am who I am, standing here in Congress, in no small part because of Debbie. While Debbie is stepping down from her position at the Polk Brothers Foundation to pursue new adventures, we know that she will continue to be a tireless advocate for a more just and loving society. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, it is my great honor to commend Debbie Resnick for the lives changed, the impact made through service in our communities. Congratulations, and thank you, Debbie. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Reverend Walter Slim Coleman, whose transformational leadership and powerful legacy has shaped the political and spiritual consciousness of so many. There is so much we have won in Chicago and across the nation that would not be possible without the witness of Reverend Slim Coleman. A retired United Methodist pastor, Reverend Coleman and his wife Emma Lozano showed us how to truly love our neighbors when they opened the doors of Adalberto United Methodist Church in Humboldt Park to provide sanctuary to Elvira Arellano and many other undocumented immigrants fighting from deportations. They laid the groundwork for Chicago to declare itself a sanctuary city. And as a movement builder across several decades, his work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Students for a Democratic Society, and eventually the Rainbow Coalition showed us how to build multiracial, multicultural solidarity movements that center our mutual liberation. He laid a foundation of solidarity for both Chicago's first Black mayor, Mayor Harold Washington, and Chicago's most recently elected mayor, Mayor Brandon Johnson, to take up their positions on the 5th floor of City Hall. As an organizer, Reverend Coleman showed us what people power can do, whether through his work to establish local school councils through Chicago, register thousands of voters in the 1983 mayoral election, or build coalitions around housing, education, and jobs. His life and his legacy will continue to be a light in dark places, reminding us that un pueblo unido jamás será vencido. To his wife, Pastora Emma Lozano, who we love, we are with you. Pastor Coleman may precede you in his homegoing, but you are not alone. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, it is my privilege to submit this commendation into the congressional record to honor the life, the legacy of Reverend Walter Slim Coleman. Rest in power, Pastor Coleman. Rest in power. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. Would the gentlewoman provide a translation of her remarks to the desk? The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Sam Simmenmaker, who is retiring this week after 64 years with the White River Broadcasting in my hometown of Columbus, Indiana. Sam grew up in Pulaski County, graduated from Indiana University in 1954. He started his radio career in Goshen and later covered the Indianapolis Indians for WTTV. Sam joined WCSI on January 1st, 1960, and over the past 6 decades, he has covered generations of high school athletes, receiving multiple awards, including the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame and the Indiana Sports Writer and Sportscasters Hall of Fame. Sam and his trademark, "Holy Cow," will be truly missed. I congratulate and wish Sam the best of luck in his retirement. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize Ed Jenkins, who was named Indiana Teacher of the Year. An Indiana native, Ed teaches English at Franklin Community College High School in my district. Those who know him say Sam is dedicated to his students and passionate about instilling a love of reading. I want to thank Ed for his work to grow our next generation of leaders. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize former Fire Captain Mike Buckley. Mike served the Rushville Fire Department for 32 years, retiring as captain in 2017. He later worked for the Indiana State Police as a motor carrier inspector. I recently met Mike and learned of his cancer diagnosis at a benefit in his honor at Glenview Volunteer Fire Station. I'm so proud that that community is supporting him in this challenge, and I'm grateful to have met him. God bless Mike and the entire Buckley family. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize Franklin County College student Emma McLeish, who recently received the American Red Cross's Life-Saving Award for Professional Responders. Last year, Emma used her Red Cross training to help save lives twice. In July, she unexpectedly helped deliver a neighbor's baby, and then in October, she saved a man suffering from cardiac arrest. Emma is a true hero, and it's my honor to recognize her today. Mr. Speaker, this weekend is the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. Beginning in 1911, the first Indy 500 was unlike anything the world has ever seen, with 40 qualifiers fighting a 500-mile race for an overall total purse of $27,000. 80,000 spectators came out to watch Ray Harron drive into victory, and a tradition was born. The greatest spectacle in racing has evolved over the last century, but its time-honored traditions keep racing fans coming back every Memorial Day weekend, like I will this weekend. This year promises to be no different, hosting hundreds and thousands of people from all over the world. I wish all this year's drivers the best of luck, and I'm glad to say this is May. Mr. Speaker, the state of our southern border is a travesty, and this administration refuses to face the facts. I'm here to repeat what we all know and what we've all said. Border security is national security. We have seen over 7.8 million illegal aliens cross ever since President Biden took office, bringing chaos, crime, and terror into our country. It's time to take a real action, build the wall, grow Border Patrol, and reinstate the policies that we know work. Mr. Speaker, inflation under this administration continues to hit record highs. We are all paying the price for this administration's mistakes. In April, the average Indiana household was paying $948 per month than they were in January 2021. Everything from electricity to rent to groceries costs more under this administration. Numbers don't lie, and Democrats can't keep pretending everything is okay. I strongly urge the Biden administration to quit ruining the American middle class. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ruiz, for 5 minutes.
I rise today to recognize the life and legacy. Let me go back. I rise today to honor and congratulate Hemet Police Chief Eddie Poost on his retirement after serving the city of Hemet for over 27 years. Police officers spend their lives putting service before self, striving to make a positive change in their community, and Chief Poost embodies that through and through. Chief Poost began his career with the City of Hemet Police Department in 1996. After Police Academy, he started as a patrol officer. During his career, he worked a number of assignments, including 16 years in SWAT, until eventually being appointed as the 18th Police Chief of Hemet Police Department. In addition to his 4-year tenure as police chief, he also served for 10 months as the City of Hemet's interim city manager. After almost 30 years as a pillar of leadership in the Hemet community, Chief Poost has displayed accountability, strength, and compassion during his service. In every rank and position Chief Poost held, he was incredibly committed to tackling the issues that improve the safety and quality of life for the residents he served. On behalf of the people in Hemet, San Jacinto Valley, and the entire district, we appreciate every moment Chief Poost dedicated to protecting and serving us. His service to the community is nothing short of exemplary. Thank you, Chief Poost, for tirelessly working to keep the people of Hemet safe for the past 27 years. I rise today to recognize the life and legacy of Mr. Richard Moreno Ramirez, a pillar of the Coachella Valley and exceptional athlete. Mr. Ramirez was an accomplished athlete, coach, athletic director, educator, and loving husband, father, grandfather, and so much more. Known as Mr. Green and Gold, the colors of his beloved Coachella Valley High School, Mr. Ramirez was a man of and for the community. He was a beloved mentor for many and a leader in the community. He was my activities director and athletics director while I was a student athlete and ASB president at Coachella Valley High School. His whole life, he worked to foster a sense of school spirit and community pride that empowers students to create the change they wish to see in the world. I learned 3 key lessons from Mr. Ramirez that I will always carry with me. First, your roots matter. Second, school and community pride is important. And third, to always serve the community. Mr. Ramirez was born on October 16, 1941, on a ranch in Thermal, California, to parents Ramon and Dolores Ramirez. Raised in the eastern Coachella Valley, he attended Coachella Valley High School, where his love for sports took root, playing for their baseball and football teams, where he excelled at sports, winning 3 baseball and 2 football championships. After graduation, he attended Riverside City College and then went on to California State University, Long Beach, where he achieved great success in both academics and baseball. So much so, he brought home the university's first baseball title in 1964 and was recently inducted into their Sports Hall of Fame. After college, wanting to give back to his community, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He returned home to serve the community that raised him at Coachella Valley High School for the next 40 years. While athletic director at CV High School, he always instilled a sense of school spirit and community pride in all students. Even throughout his retirement, Mr. Ramirez always put service above self, and he served on the board for many nonprofit organizations. He was also dedicated to cultivating the next generation of leaders through the CV High School Alumni Association, where he raised funds to provide scholarships for local students. Each athlete, student, teacher, neighbor, and friend will undoubtedly recall Mr. Ramirez as a pillar of the community. So together, as we mourn his passing with his wife, Dr. Diane Ramirez, his children, Ronan and Roderick Ramirez, grandchildren, Rosen and Sophia, and all his friends and loved ones, we honor his legacy as a man who returned home to his roots and gave his all to serve his community and others. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cloud, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to honor George Hayek, a native of Victoria, Texas, who passed away on May 4th at the age of 104 years. George's 104 years marked a life well lived. He was a wonderful man whose life truly emulated the values of faith, family, and freedom that built the American miracle. Growing up in the family of grocery store business, George learned the early value of hard work and the importance of family. These values guided him throughout his long life. When his country called, George answered the call without hesitation and served in some of the most significant battles of World War II, including D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, and the Ardennes Campaign. It's because of the bravery of men like George that we enjoy the freedoms we do today. After returning home from the war, George continued his journey and became an entrepreneur, where his work ethic, dedication, helped him to grow a successful local business. He was always ready to give back to the community and even served as a volunteer firefighter, but it was at home where George truly thrived, where he built his beautiful family with his devoted wife of 75 years. He loved nothing more than spending time with his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even great-great-grandchildren. Quite the storyteller. Those closest to him know him of the captivating family tales that he would tell, along with his friends, of those significant battle campaigns that he was in. And faith was the key central focus to George's life. Oftentimes, George's powerful voice could be heard singing hymns loudly in worship, praising the Lord with all his heart. This faith guided him, giving him strength and comfort his whole life. As we look back on George's life, we are reminded of the profound impact one person can have on a family, a community, and a nation. George's life is a testament to service, love, and faith, and he fully lived, loved deeply, and served honorably. As we honor him today, let's remember the legacy that he left and strive to live with the same courage, dedication, and love that he showed every day of his 104 years. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Officer Kyle Hicks of the Corpus Christi Police Department, who tragically died in the line of duty on April 24th, 2024. Kyle was a dedicated husband, father, and public servant to all who knew him, known for his selflessness, steadfast integrity, and tireless commitment to his community. Kyle was 12 years old when he became a Texan, where he graduated from Grace Preparatory Academy in Arlington, marking the start of a life devoted to public service and dedication to others. Family was central to Kyle's life. In his early years as an employee of Chick-fil-A, he met his future wife, Cassie, whom he married in Arlington, and they soon became proud parents of 4. It didn't take long for Kyle and Cassie to pursue public service as a family. Even after being promoted to general manager at Chick-fil-A, Kyle decided to follow his dream and serve and protect his community. And in January of 2023, he graduated from the police academy to become an officer with the Corpus Christi Police Department. As an officer, Kyle Hicks was beloved by his colleagues, known for his quiet strength, his unique sense of humor, his unwavering integrity. Throughout his career as a police officer, Kyle devoted himself entirely to the safety and well-being of our families and our community, serving to make Corpus Christi a better and safer place for everyone. As we grieve his loss, we take comfort in knowing that he lived a life of profound purpose. His sacrifice is a testament to the courage and dedication of our law enforcement officers, inspiring all of us to honor his memory through our commitment to service. John 15:13 says this, "Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends." It's humbling to think that we get to enjoy the blessings of liberty because of people like Kyle who've committed their life to service. May God bring comfort to his loved ones and grant them his peace, which surpasses all understanding during this very difficult time. Our prayers are with them. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Garcia, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor my friend Barry Romo, who passed away earlier this month. Barry was a decorated Vietnam veteran who, having seen the horrors of the U.S. role in Vietnam, became a leading organizer. He challenged the Pentagon and White House narratives about the conflict, and he organized actions on the National Mall, at the Supreme Court, and at Arlington National Cemetery to protest the war. Barry was the national coordinator for Vietnam Veterans Against the War for more than 40 years, and in that role, he advocated greater health care coverage for veterans affected by Agent Orange and other toxins. His activism later extended to other social justice causes like affordable housing, veterans, homelessness prevention, and workplace fairness. Barry was a longtime resident of the Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago, where he was a mentor to other veterans as well. Our community will miss you, Barry. Rest in peace. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes from Illinois, Mr. Bost, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak in support of the 2024 Farm Bill. The Farm Bill touches the lives of every person in this country, no matter who you are or where you're from, rural or urban or suburban. That's why it is such an honor to be the Southern Illinois voice for the House on the House Agricultural Committee. You know, I've been given the opportunity to build an incredible relationship with our farmers across my district, and I've sought their input and traveling around to meet with them where they're at. Their feedback has been critical in this process. And for me, this Farm Bill is a partnership with my people. Farmers and producers in my district understand the positive impact the Farm Bill has on rural communities. Now, in Southern Illinois, agriculture is our second largest employer, just behind Scott Air Force Base. And I'm proud to serve the 10,000 producers in one of the most diverse ag districts in this United States. In addition to growing staples like corn, soybeans, we're also home to a variety of specialty crops, livestock, and dairy. While each one might be different, they all share the same goal: a strong farm safety net. Our farmers produce the food, fuel, and fiber that this nation runs on. They play an essential role in our communities. It's only right that we support them and have their backs in times of need. That is why the Farm Bill exists. It is not just written for good times, it is also written for bad. When your crops fail, the Farm Bill provides a safety net. When you need a loan to save a family farm, the Farm Bill ensures access to credit. When your community needs an updated water system, the Farm Bill secures that funding. When your rural home lacks internet access, the Farm Bill bridges that gap for broadband service. And when you need help feeding your family, the Farm Bill supports healthy nutrition programs to make sure Americans don't go to bed hungry. The Farm Bill has always been a top priority for me. By reinforcing crop insurance, boosting commodity reference prices, we're supporting the agricultural industries on their worst days and investing in them into tomorrow. This is vitally important. Now, another key priority of mine is ensuring farmers are not able to not only feed folks at home, but around the world. My district is blessed to be located between the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. We are strategically placed to export our commodities abroad. In 2022, Illinois exports for corn and soybeans totaled over $3.5 billion. The MAP and FMD programs play a critical role in moving commodities from farmers to field to foreign markets. However, these programs are often oversubscribed and underfunded, leaving producers at a competitive disadvantage on the global market. We need to bolster these programs and expand into new markets and strengthening our trade relations. Lastly, we need to establish guidelines for large solar panel projects that are eating up acres after acre of prime farmland. My constituents have had enough. We must give local communities a say in the approval of the process. That is why I'm pleased that the Solar Act, has been included in this legislation. We're giving producers the flexibility to use solar energy on their farms while setting guidelines for large projects. To close, Mr. Speaker, I would like to restate my support for the Farm Bill. The bill is a big win for our farmers. It will have a big impact across the country, and I urge my colleagues on the Agriculture Committee to support this bill as it moves through the markup process tomorrow. And I hope it will receive strong support on the House floor as well. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Spanberger, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today during Military Appreciation Month and ahead of Memorial Day to recognize some of the many Virginians who have contributed to Virginia's proud legacy of military service and those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Earlier this month, I reached out to families across the 7th District, asking them to share stories of service, recognizing the unwavering courage and commitment of their loved ones who have answered the call to serve our country. I'm honored to work on behalf of so many military families and veterans, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to stand here today to read some of the extraordinary stories I received. Lisa Harms from Stafford County recognized her daughter, Second Lieutenant Sabrina Harms, who is currently serving in the U.S. Air Force, a UVA alumna, granddaughter of World War II and Korean War veterans, and the niece of Vietnam and Persian War veterans. Sabrina is in her 3rd year of medical school at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences and will graduate as a family medicine doctor next May to care for our service members, veterans, and their families. Thank you for your devotion to our country and fellow service members, Sabrina. And Lisa, you must be incredibly proud. Bonnie, who lives in Stafford County, shared with me the story of her father, Jesse James Verling, a lifelong Orange County resident. Mr. Verling never talked much of the details of his service in the Philippines and in the European theater during World War II. However, following his passing, Bonnie opened his safe deposit box and discovered his military decorations, getting to understand more about her father's brave and dedicated service on behalf of our country. Our nation owes an immense debt of gratitude to every one of our neighbors who put on the uniform. Thank you, Bonnie, for recognizing your father's service and allowing me the opportunity to do so in the congressional record. William Haas from Prince William County shared his father's story of service. William Brokaw Haas Sr. served in the U.S. Army during World War II, having enlisted straight out of high school. After seeing combat during the Battle of the Bulge, he was transferred to Okinawa following Germany's unconditional surrender, and he ultimately served on both fronts of the war. His resolve, courage, and commitment to democracy are an inspiration, and I'm glad to have received his story and have the opportunity to recognize his service. Stephen from Orange County recognized many members of his family who served to preserve the freedoms we enjoy as Americans. His father and 2 uncles who served during World War II, his brother who served in Vietnam, and his brother who served stateside as a member of the detail at Fort Myer, responsible for interring the honored dead at Arlington National Cemetery. Stephen wrote, quote, "As they say, freedom isn't free, and we should all be thankful every day for those willing to pay the price." Stephen, I'm grateful for your family's sacrifices on behalf of our country. And as we head towards Memorial Day weekend, we remember the Virginians who bravely defended and died for our country. Virginians like Second Lieutenant Leonard M. Coward III. Leonard's sister, Lauren Salinas, wrote to me about her brother's career in service. After growing up in Culpeper County, Leonard graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 2003, and he was deployed in early 2004. And he was killed in action in Iraq on May 16, 2004. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. And Lauren wrote, quote, 20 years have passed, but I remain grateful for the support and the love we still receive from many who knew Leonard in the community. We will never forget the Virginians whose individual sacrifices allow us to enjoy the promises of freedom. And my heart is with Leonard's family as they continue to hold his memory and spirit with them. Every one of our neighbors who are serving or have served in the United States of America's uniform, and those who have ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms, we honor you. This Memorial Day, I encourage all of my colleagues and all Americans across the country to reflect on the service and the sacrifice of the brave service members, our neighbors, friends, and loved ones, those who paid the heavy price of freedom as we remember those who never came home. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the 100th anniversary of the U.S. Foreign Service. Over the past century, Foreign Service officers, many of whom call Virginia home, have worked tirelessly around the globe to help maintain the global leadership of the United States. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working alongside many Foreign Service officers. These Americans display an unwavering commitment to our diplomacy and our national security. And as we celebrate 100 years of modern American diplomacy, let's pause to reflect on the invaluable contributions made by these public servants on behalf of our country, even while facing threats and working far from their hometowns and oftentimes their families. I stand here today to express my profound gratitude to these officers, as well as to honor the hundreds of members of our foreign service who have given their lives in service abroad. To recognize this important
The
centennial,
gentleman's time has expired.
I encourage my colleagues to support the mint to commemorate the coin celebrating 100 years of the U.S. Foreign Service. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Langsworth, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Jackie Walker on her remarkable career after 40 years of service as an anchor and a reporter for WIVB Channel 4 News in Buffalo. Today, Jackie steps away from the anchor desk for the last time. For decades, Jackie Walker has been a trusted and beloved journalist tasked with delivering the very best news with joy and the very worst news with grace. There's a reason she's been awarded an Emmy, as well as the prestigious Silver Circle Award in the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Jackie has also been inducted into the New York State Broadcasters Hall of Fame and the Buffalo Broadcasters Hall of Fame. These are just a few of her awards and achievements. If I were to read the entire list, I'd be here all day. As she signs off today, Western New York is losing a universally trusted voice, delivering the news of the day to the Buffalo-Niagara region. Jackie is an immense talent that has helped to shape so many historical moments for our community. In fact, Jackie is the longest tenured news anchor at one station in the history of the Buffalo media market. She leaves huge shoes to fill behind Channel 4's anchor desk tonight, and she will be sorely missed. Mr. Speaker, Jackie's integrity, her commitment to excellence, and her dedication to her craft set a standard for journalism that will continue to inspire future generations of reporters and anchors. As Jackie Walker embarks on the new chapter of her life, I want to thank her for her immense contributions to our community. Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the career of John Murphy, the voice of the Buffalo Bills that announced his retirement just a short time ago. When you're from Western New York, the Buffalo Bills are part of your DNA. And John Murphy was a fixture of the Bills announced team for over 30 years. John Murphy served side by side with the legendary Van Miller, and they embody the spirit and the passion of Bills Mafia. As he steps away from his role as the voice of the Bills, we not only reflect on his career with immense gratitude, but also celebrate the legacy he's left behind. John's journey with the Bills began as a color analyst, but in his last 19 years, as the voice narrating every play that made him a household name. His voice became synonymous with Bills football, and the excitement and the authenticity John brought to the booth made it feel like you were right there on the sidelines with him. We all have fond memories listening to John, whether it was describing a game-winning drive or a critical defensive stop. John captured every second of the drama and joy and sometimes heartbreak that is Bills football. Thank you, John Murphy, on behalf of Bills Mafia, for your years of service. You are truly one of the greats, and we will miss hearing you each and every game day. Go Bills. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor the life, the career of my good friend Jim Zimmer, who has dedicated 32 years of his life to keeping manufacturing jobs in Southern California. Jim is retiring from his position as president of Toyota's first North American manufacturing facility in our community. Under his guidance, that manufacturing auto plant in Southern California is still there. As a fellow Bruin, Jim started his career with a finance team in 1992, and by working hard, he made his way up to management. And his dedication and his efforts leading that manufacturing success, that plant's manufacturing success, they recently celebrated 50 years of existence in Southern California. And Jim has also been a committed member of our community, serving on the boards of the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, the California Conference on Equality and Justice, and the Long Beach Ronald McDonald House. Jim, I want to take this moment to thank you for your leadership, your dedication, and always recognizing the backbone of America's manufacturing, its workers. Jim, you've shown exemplified key values in our Southern California community. Jim, thank you very much. And Jim, let me say, Week 5 will live forever. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Dela Cruz, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes.
Without objection, the woman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it was 9 months ago that I introduced a resolution in the House of Representatives expressing support for diplomatic action to ensure water deliveries from Mexico to the United States under the 1944 Water Treaty that is still in effect. This resolution passed with bipartisan support, and still to this day, the Department of Agriculture, the IBWC, and senior leadership at the State Department have not been able to secure water for our South Texas farmers. So you ask, well, what does this mean to us? What is the result of their lack of action? Well, let me tell you what that result is. In South Texas, one of our largest employers, the Rio Grande Valley Sugar Growers, closed. That's job losses of 500 people. And just like those crops that have no water, 500 jobs in our district went to dust. But what is the bigger impact of that? The bigger impact of that is that we no longer have a sugar mill in Texas. What does that mean to all Americans across this country? That means that we will now have to rely on other countries to satisfy that sugar that was being produced in South Texas. That means that we're more reliant on other countries when we in the United States have the capabilities and have the businesses to produce our own sugar. It is simply unacceptable. The situation continues to get worse. In fact, as of May 4th, Mexico owes the United States more than 850,000 acre-feet of water under this treaty. In December, I had a call with Secretary Blinken, and I was left with the impression that he saw this just as important as we did in South Texas. However, our attempts to have follow-up meetings with the Secretary have proven unsuccessful. I've called both the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken. I've talked to and called the U.S. Ambassador to Mexico to put pressure on Mexico, but yet our phone calls, our emails, they go unanswered. They are leaving South Texas farmers to fend for themselves. And what does that mean? That means that our citrus industry is now at risk of no longer being around. One day we will look at the citrus industry and we too may see them close their doors forever. And it is simply unacceptable. The lack of progress from this administration is an outrage to the men and women who are now out of work. It is an outrage for our farmers and our communities in South Texas who depend on these industries. But you know what? This is an outrage to all Americans. Food security is a matter of national security. And I wish that Secretary Blinken, I wish that our Agriculture Secretary, and I wish our U.S. Ambassador to Mexico were just as outraged as I am, just as outraged as the people of South Texas who have lost the sugar mill and who are watching the slow death of our citrus industry. I am encouraging not only Secretary Blinken, the U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, the IBWC, to start making this a priority. I am working with appropriations because I believe that if we cannot get our water, if we cannot save our citrus industry, if we cannot save the jobs that industry allows, if we cannot save our farmers, then Mexico does not deserve to have any money appropriated to them. I believe that we need to use every tool that we have available to force Mexico to abide by the treaty. We want our water. We demand our water. National security is food security. With that, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Wexton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you may know, last year I was diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP. It's basically Parkinson's on steroids, and I don't recommend it.
Just a minute, please. Please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you may know, last year I was diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP. It's basically Parkinson's on steroids, and I don't recommend it. It's affected my ability to speak, so I'm using this text-to-speech app to make it easier for you and our colleagues to hear and understand me. I rise today in support of PSP Awareness Month. Over the past year, I've come to personally know how scary and devastating a condition PSP can be for those of us battling it and for those close to us who love us and want us to be well again. Despite its life-changing impact on more than 30,000 Americans, PSP remains relatively unknown to the general public. I am on a mission to change that. For those of you who are not familiar, PSP is a neurodegenerative condition that occurs when a buildup of a protein called tau damages brain cells, particularly in the parts of the brain that control speech, balance, coordination, and eye movement. With a rare disease like PSP, there is a lot of confusion about what it is and also what it is not. As you've noticed, it has affected my mobility. In less than a year, I've gone from striding confidently into and around this chamber to relying on my walker to get around. PSP affects how loudly and clearly I can speak, which is not an ideal situation for a politician. In conversation, I've asked people to just ask me to repeat myself if they can't understand me, or find a quieter space to talk so I can be heard. I'm grateful that I've received such accommodating support from my colleagues and the staff here in the House that allows me to use this text-to-speech technology to be able to participate in committee hearings and to speak on the floor. PSP has no cure and its cause is unknown. Some medications may help temporarily alleviate some symptoms, and an active lifestyle and physical therapies can help to slow its progress. Whatever your politics, when it comes to illness, progressive is not a good thing to be. While I will never train for or compete in another triathlon, by working out regularly and doing physical therapy, I've improved my posture and balance to help prevent falls, a common source of serious injury for people with PSP. And I have a rescue inhaler and certain medications I can take immediately before social engagements that can help improve my affect and my speech. While PSP has clearly taken a toll on my body, it has not affected who I am inside. My fellow women members know I'll still chime in on the group chat with a joke or barb, which do not need to be repeated on the House floor. I still keep my staff on their toes by riding down ramps around the Capitol complex on my walker, as if they were mini roller coasters. And I'm still just as dedicated to doing my job of serving my community in Congress as the very first day I got here. I share the personal details of my journey with PSP not because I want to be told how inspiring I am or for you to feel sorry for me. I speak about what I'm going through because there are tens of thousands of other Americans out there who are fighting the same battles I am, and many of their loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors are having similar struggles with how to deal with the rapid and scary changes happening to the person that they know and love. They're likely spending months or even years going to doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment anxiously hoping for answers, but are left with more questions because too few medical providers are familiar enough with PSP to know what telltale signs to look for and diagnose. In fact, one of the most common ways to diagnose and differentiate PSP from Parkinson's is signs of brain atrophy seen in an MRI scan, which appears in the shape of a hummingbird. The hummingbird sign has become a symbol for PSP, which is why I'll be wearing a PSP Awareness Hummingbird pin today. Raising awareness of PSP can mean quicker, accurate diagnosis, the development of more effective treatments, and more time for those battling PSP to take on this disease with all the resources and support available. I'm determined to use my platform to raise awareness of what PSP is and the urgent need to do more to fight against it. I'm proud that over 80 of my colleagues from both sides of the aisle have joined me on a resolution to recognize May as PSP Awareness Month. I've also championed the national plan to end Parkinson's Act that would help bring greater resources to discovering the causes, effective treatments, and a cure for Parkinson's and related Parkinsonisms like my PSP. This bipartisan legislation passed the House last year with overwhelming bipartisan support, and I hope that the Senate will take it up very soon and send it to President Biden's desk. Madam Speaker, I've spent my career uplifting the stories of those in need. I am committed to continuing that work now on behalf of the PSP community and making the most of this platform that I have for as long as I am able. I urge my colleagues to join me this month to raise awareness of PSP and work together to fight this terrible disease. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Edwards, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I rise on behalf of my constituents in Western North Carolina to highlight the dire situation at the southern border and to advocate for the enforcement of our nation's immigration laws. The Biden administration continues to break records, and not in a good way. The number of individuals on the terrorist watch list that were apprehended illegally crossing the southwest border increased 2,500% from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2023, and a record-breaking 301,000 migrants were caught trying to illegally enter our country in the month of December alone. Our country's border control agents are overwhelmed and they're underfunded. And what has President Biden done? Nothing but open our southern border up to more illegal immigrants and chaos. I went to the Tucson sector of the southern border last year to witness the crisis for myself. I saw millions of taxpayer dollars in the form of unused border wall materials rusting away in the hot Arizona sun. Local law enforcement pointed out to me where the border wall ends at the top of a hill and shared how cartel members sit on the Mexico side of the mountain peak to serve as a lookout. These cartel members are able to see for miles and signal to illegal immigrants when the coast is clear so that migrants can then flood our open border. Many of the illegal immigrants trying to cross our border are military-aged men. They're not families and children. They're cartel members trying to smuggle fentanyl into our borders and to cause harm to our communities. Local law enforcement shared how difficult it's been to step up when executives in the federal government refuse to prioritize our national security. I sympathize with Cochise County law enforcement, and I think every law enforcement officer across this country can sympathize too. Sheriffs across this country have told me that they've asked to meet with Joe Biden to tell him firsthand of the problems that they're having, and their requests, for some reason, have not been granted. Why will the president not meet with them? Is he afraid of the truth? Since 2021, America has seen an unprecedented surge at our southern border. Customs and Border Patrol reports over 7.6 million encounters, and the Secretary of Homeland Security has affirmed more than 85% of the migrants caught illegally crossing our southern border are ultimately released back into the country. That's nearly 6.5 million migrants released into the interior of the United States by the Department of Homeland Security since January 2021. Now we have record levels of fentanyl flowing across our borders, courtesy of the Mexican cartels. Over 27,000 pounds were seized last year, and it's destroying the very fabric of our communities. In 2022 alone, illicit opioids claimed the lives of 313 members of my district. That's 313 sets of mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, friends, and loved ones gone due to drug trafficking promoted at our southern border and ignored by our country's president. During my time in Congress, I've co-sponsored, helped pass legislation in the House to secure the southern border and end this administration's radical and dangerous border policies. I was proud to co-sponsor and vote for H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, over a year ago, last May. Senate Democrats and President Biden could take real concrete steps to solve this migration crisis and to address everything from court backlogs to the trafficking of unaccompanied children if they would just get behind H.R. 2. But they haven't. Why are Democrats so adamantly opposed to common sense legislation to protect Americans and close our southern border once and for all? Instead of supporting the strongest border security package in American history, the Senate has proposed a do-nothing border bill that enriches criminal networks, uses taxpayer dollars to fund organizations that facilitate mass illegal immigration, codifies Biden's open border policies like catch and release. As terrorists, drugs, and weapons flow freely into our country, I believe that we should be putting American people first, not playing political patty cake. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, this is a week that farmers, ranchers, and agriculture producers in my state of Kansas have long awaited. The House Agriculture Committee will finally mark up a 5-year farm bill. I want to start by saying thank you to Chairman G.T. Thompson for leading the committee in developing a bipartisan, comprehensive, fiscally conservative farm bill that gives our farmers, ranchers, and agriculture producers the certainty they deserve. Around this time last year, the chairman and I hosted a farm bill listening session next to a wheat field in my district. We heard from 150 Kansans about their priorities for a farm bill. They were clear. They need a farm bill that gives them certainty as they work day in and day out to feed, clothe, and fuel the world. The Farm Food and National Security Act does just that. This farm bill strengthens the farm safety net and protects crop insurance. Agriculture producers in Kansas understand firsthand how important that is. In February of 2021, Kansas had 13 consecutive days of below freezing temperatures, which is a 40-year record. Our producers worked around the clock to protect their cattle and ensure they survived. Just last summer, drought and market conditions in Kansas caused producers to abandon the highest number of acres of wheat since World War I. Wheat farmers have seen a 35% decrease in production in the last year as a result. Madam Speaker, the reality is Mother Nature is a very difficult business partner. One bad crop year could put the livelihood of our producers and their families at risk. This farm bill gives these hardworking individuals more certainty by strengthening the farm safety net, adjusting reference prices, and modernizing the livestock indemnity program, dairy supports, and conservation reserve program. The committee's farm bill also maintains American food independence and invests tax dollars in places we can see a return on those dollars. America is the freest country in the world, in part because we have never had to rely on another country to feed us. At the heart of that independence is agriculture, research, and innovation. The Big First is home to some of the crown jewels of the animal health corridor, Kansas State University and the National Bio and Agri-Defense Facility. These institutions give the nation a scientific hub of world-renowned research. Kansas State University is conducting groundbreaking research into areas including new heat-tolerant wheat varieties and higher-yielding sorghum. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's state-of-the-art NBAF facility in Manhattan will conduct research into serious animal diseases threats to be an important backstop in protecting our nation's food supply. This work and America's continued ability to feed ourselves for generations to come depend on a 5-year farm bill that prioritizes food security as national security. Madam Speaker, this farm bill makes robust investments in the market access program and foreign market development programs that ensure our American producers remain in the international marketplace. It proactively addresses issues like deferred maintenance costs at land-grant institutions and the country's veterinarian shortage before that problem gets even worse. I've been to this floor nearly 30 times to push for my priorities in this farm bill: to protect and strengthen crop insurance, to promote trade programs that help America remain competitive and secure, conduct rigorous oversight of the executive branch to fight big government overreach, and invest in agricultural research at America's land-grant universities. I'm pleased that the Farm, Food, and National Security Act does just that. We need to pass a 5-year, fiscally conservative farm bill long enough to provide certainty and short enough for Congress to respond to market changes. Farm bills feed every corner of the nation, from New England to the islands of Hawaii, both our coast, down to the Gulf, and even the heartland of this country, including Kansas. American agricultural producers and consumers are counting on it. The legislation we mark up this week will have ripple effects for years to come. This body and Congress must use this legislation to address the concerns we have all heard over the last several years. When we kicked off our Farm Bill listening session last year, there were 3 combines parked behind us: John Deere, Case, and Gleaner. When you grow up on a farm, you're born into loyalty to one of these trusted American brands. They have different styles and features, but they are all designed to do the same thing: harvest. Our listening session that day and the bill that House Agriculture Committee marks up this week are no different. We all have different priorities and backgrounds, but we are all here to do the same thing: harvest, work hard, and effectively turn out a product, the Farm Bill. America's farmers, ranchers, and ag producers deserve it. America's food and national security depend on it, and Congress must deliver it. This farm bill is something our ag community can be proud of. It puts dollars in places where Americans can see a good return on their investment. It tightens budgets and reins in reckless spending that doesn't serve taxpayers. Most importantly, this bill ensures that American farmers, ranchers, and ag producers can continue to keep us all fueled, fed, and clothed. The Farm, Food, and National Security Act is the first step in the right direction, and I look forward to this week's markup. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Ciscomani, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to remember U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Eugene D. Santarelli, who passed away on September 21st, 2023, at 79 years old. Lieutenant General Santarelli was a highly decorated 3-star general who commenced his military career following his graduation from the University of Notre Dame in 1966. A remarkable pilot, instructor, and mentor, he was qualified in and flew a dozen different aircraft types. Over the course of his career, he accumulated approximately 3,600 flying hours, including 901 combat hours. He commanded a numbered Air Force, an air division, and 3 flying wings in his 32-year career. General Santarelli is survived by his spouse, Kay Santarelli, sister Paula Anthony, and brother Francis. His dedication and service to our country did not go unnoticed. During his lifetime, he was awarded the Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, Meritorious Service Medal, Air Medals, Aerial Achievement Medal, Air Force Commendation Medal, and Combat Readiness Medal. General Santarelli was at his best when teaching, mentoring, or leading through his own example. In the hearts of the Tucson community and AZ-06, Lieutenant General Santarelli remains a true hero. We extend our gratitude for his dedicated service and are eternally thankful for all his contributions. Madam Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the University of Arizona baseball team by clinching the Pac-12 Conference Championship after defeating Oregon State. The Wildcats lost their first two games and were in a must-win game on Saturday night. In Arizona fashion, they had a walk-off double, scoring 2 runs and winning the game 4-3. Head coach Chip Hale has a current season record of 33 wins and 20 losses and conference record of 20 wins, 10 losses. He is the first coach in conference history to be named Pac-12 Player and Coach of the Year. I met Coach Hale a year ago at High Corbett Field and know that he will continue to do great things for this program. As a former Wildcat, I know he has what it takes to take this team to the College World Series. Lastly, I would like to recognize Dawson Netz, a former intern in my Tucson district office, who is a team captain and pitcher. He was voted Pac-12 preseason all-conference player and is currently 8 games away from being the all-time leader in appearances for Arizona baseball. I'm excited to see what the future holds for these athletes, and good luck in the Pac-12 tournament. Bear down. Madam Speaker, I rise today in honor and recognize a group of talented Cochise College art students and the mural they painted in the city of Sierra Vista. The mural depicts the beauty of the San Pedro River and the wildlife in Cochise County, serving as a reminder of our connection to nature and the need to steward it wisely. Through its Neighborhood Partnership Initiative grant program, the City of Sierra Vista provides funding for projects like the mural and inspires community members to help beautify the city. The mural, which wraps around the Oscar Rim Community Center, is a passion project of Cochise College art instructor Jen Marie Selensnack and her students, and a testament to the creativity of our Sierra Vista community. To Ms. Selensnack and her students, thank you for your work and for making Sierra Vista an even more beautiful city. With that, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Malliotakis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to recognize the life of Lee Covino, a friend, a U.S. Army veteran, and a Staten Islander who dedicated his life to making our country and community a better place for those who served. Lee served our country in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, and after his service, he attended the College of Staten Island on scholarship from the GI Bill. It was here that his passion for Veterans Affairs flourished. He became a peer counselor for local veterans, and almost a decade later began working as an intervention counselor for the VA's Vietnam Veterans Outreach Center, assisting nearly 1,000 Vietnam-era and combat veterans across Staten Island and Brooklyn. In July of 1990, Lee was appointed to the cabinet of Staten Island Borough President Guy Molinari, where he served as the Veterans Affairs Advisor and Director of Contracts and Procurement. His service to our borough continued for another 2 decades, extending his tenure at Borough Hall through the administrations of James Molinaro and James Otto until his retirement in 2014. And in 2002, Mayor Michael Bloomberg appointed him to the city's Veterans Advisory Board, where he served until April 2015, retiring as the board's vice chairman. During this time at Borough and City Halls, Lee played a major role in bringing the Vet Center and the Veterans Affairs Clinic to Staten Island and obtaining a Staten Island bus link to Brooklyn's VA Medical Center. This week, New York City also will celebrate its 36th annual Fleet Week, a show of appreciation for our nation's Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard teams. Lee was instrumental in helping coordinate local activities and events for this grand recognition of our armed forces. And he also worked tirelessly to expand veteran services to minority-based areas and assist veterans with resume development and learning computer skills so that they could find employment and readjust to civilian life. Lee's dedication to New York City veterans did not end with his official duties. After his retirement, he continued to serve as an invaluable resource for many elected officials, including myself, where he helped our office organize our Veterans Roundtable and became reliable counsel for veterans-focused legislation and ideas. Because of the profound impact he has had in our community, Lee was installed into the College of Staten Island Alumni Hall of Fame in 1989 and was set to be inducted into the New York State Veterans Hall of Fame later this year. He was a member of the VFW, American Legion, Vietnam Veterans of America, the Catholic War Veterans, AMVETS, and New York City Veterans Alliance, the 369th Veterans Association, and he served as treasurer of the United Staten Island Veterans Organization, which sponsored our borough's annual Memorial Day Parade. Here we are at the Staten Island Memorial Day Parade in 2021, which Mayor de Blasio had originally canceled, citing COVID, until Lee's advocacy and leadership made the mayor reverse his decision, and we marched together honoring our fallen. And on Monday, Memorial Day, we, the community, we will march again, and Lee's presence, it will be noticed and it will be immensely missed. Lee was a true American patriot who dedicated his entire life to service of others. And I know I speak for our entire community and city when I say his commitment to fighting for our veterans is extremely appreciated. Our office sends our deepest condolences to his daughter Marina and 3 grandchildren Melina, Michael, and Samantha as they grieve this tremendous loss. But they should rest assured that today they are in the history books of the United States Congress, and that his legacy of service and dedication will inspire us all as we continue to advocate for the rights and well-being of our veterans. I yield back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to pay tribute to a dear friend, a war veteran, and a real hero of California's 27th Congressional District who was taken from us way too soon. Mr. Bill Reynolds crossed into heaven and joined the Lord on January 11th, 2021, a couple of years ago. And as a young man, Bill crossed oceans and fought for this nation in the jungles of Vietnam. He fought in some of the war's fiercest battles while in Vietnam, including the Mekong Delta, where he was wounded but continued fighting alongside his brothers, the famous and heroic boys of 67. Bill earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for his extraordinary bravery, but he never forgot his brothers who made the ultimate sacrifice, those that didn't come home, and he never stopped serving our nation when he returned home. Bill Reynolds dedicated himself to fellow veterans in California's 27th Congressional District and around the country. His work led to the establishment of the Veterans Memorial Wall in Newhall, California, and he personally documented the stories of countless veterans to ensure their service and sacrifices will be remembered for future generations. And I'm proud to say the endless service and sacrifice of Bill will now forever be etched in the heart of Santa Clarita as well. Right in the middle of my district, today we celebrate the official renaming of the Valencia Post Office to the William L. Reynolds Post Office Building, an honor that has been signed into law by the President of the United States. This commemoration is a fitting tribute to a man who dedicated so much of his life to this beautiful nation, both on the battlefield and in our communities. And it should be noted, and frankly, fitting tribute that about 63,000 postal workers themselves are veterans. So this is very apropos. Bill was a devoted husband to his beloved wife, Meg, who lives in Santa Clarita, a loving father and grandfather, and a friend to thousands. His legacy does not only live on in the medals he won or the landmarks that bear his name, but in the lives he touched and the community that he strengthened. And he left an indelible mark on me personally, and he continues to inspire me to serve this beautiful country in this capacity.
In a time marked by stark political division, it was inspiring to witness both Democrats and Republicans unite in support of honoring this great man who epitomized the pinnacle of American valor and empathy. Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to join me in honoring Bill Reynolds, a true American hero, by supporting this special tribute. May God bless Bill Reynolds and his family, and may God continue to bless this beautiful country, the United States of America. Madam Chair, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I rise today to recognize Memorial Day. Our nation's greatness was earned by the sacrifices of a few, so that freedom and liberty would come to all. This weekend, we remember their sacrifices and their service. We're very proud that the tradition of Memorial Day originated in Pennsylvania and in a Pennsylvania community located in my district, Boalsburg, Pennsylvania. Dating back to 1864 in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, the birthplace of Memorial Day, where 3 ladies decorated the graves of fallen Civil War soldiers. They met in the graveyard and they promised to come back the following year to be able to do the same thing. And from that simple beginning act of love and remembrance came the observance of Memorial Day. Now, every year on the last Monday of May, the people across this nation gather in town squares, at memorials, and in cemeteries of fallen heroes to pay tribute to those who gave it all. This includes our service members who are missing in action or prisoners of war. According to the Department of Defense POW MIA accounting agency, more than 80,000 American citizens who served in the Vietnam War, Korean War, and World War II are still missing in action. That's why I'm proud to have introduced H-Con Res 64, which urges our mutually beneficial trade agreements to include a commitment from trading partners to continue to search and recovery efforts of our nation's missing service members. In August 2023, I was notified by the POW MIA accounting agency that 2 MIAs from my district were identified and were returning home. Army Corporal Francis James Jury of Clearfield, Pennsylvania, and Army Sergeant Richard M. Shiro of Marionville, Pennsylvania, were deemed missing in action during the Korean War. Thanks to the hard work and dedication of the POW MIA accounting agency, these 2 heroes were able to be returned home and receive the proper burial that they deserved. This nation is united by our liberties and freedoms that our men and women in uniform take an oath to protect and to defend. We will always honor our brothers and sisters who fought in battle to uphold our way of life. May God carry them in the palm of his hand, and all of our service members in the palm of his hand. This Memorial Day, as we raise the stars and stripes, as we lay wreaths at monuments, memorials, and cemeteries, let us remember that our freedoms is thanks to those who served and those who died in sacrifice. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on a controversy affecting the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee this past week. Wisconsin at Milwaukee, like many universities in America, has been the site of bizarre protests in favor of Hamas. Milwaukee is the 2nd largest university in the state of Wisconsin. While the response to these protests by universities around the country can best be described as pathetic, Milwaukee is one of the worst. Israel has suffered an attack almost unprecedented in its brutality, in which Hamas and its supporters reveled in the horrific deaths of civilians, including young children. Israel's response can best be described as very measured, particularly given that Hamas has decided to hide among hospitals and other civilian locations. Certainly, Israel's response was more measured than our response during World War II, when you look at what was done to Tokyo, what was done to Dresden. So by comparison, there is no comparison. Hamas could end this war tomorrow if they would surrender, show Israel its tunnels, its arms, and surrender the hostages. They are entirely responsible for allowing this war to go on. The university statement to the protesters appears to blame Israel. Even before the October attacks, it should have been obvious who wears the white hats here. Israel is a modern, prosperous, and tolerant country in which even Muslims can build mosques and are allowed to vote. In Gaza, from childhood on, children are raised to hate Jews. People come from Thailand, the Philippines, and Latin America, not Jewish people. They flow to Israel to live and work there. Hamas leadership, meanwhile, takes their foreign aid from Europe and lives in Qatar and Turkey. The descendants of Yasser Arafat himself don't want to live in Gaza. They live in Paris. And even with this, UWM feels they should side with Hamas. The university has tried recently to amend their position, but they still display a moral equivalence in which they can't bring themselves to say there's a right and a wrong, a good and an evil in this conflict. Their bias shows further in that their first impulse was to meet only with representatives of the protesters and not with the broader community. And this despite the fact that public opinion polls consistently show the American public as a whole, including presumably the taxpayers who fund the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, have no problem figuring out who is good and who is evil. The university should apologize for developing their own foreign policy and spend some time with the broader community and learn what the vast majority of Americans and Wisconsinites think. Thank you.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibling.
Would you pray with me? Immortal and invisible God, all power belongs to you. Gracious and merciful God, in you is found unfailing love. With you, O Lord, are not competing natures, but the whole of life. In you, we discover both tenderness and strength. You love us with a parent's compassion and guide us with your firm hand. In our lives, may we learn to strike the balance between patience and persistence. May we show no ill will toward others, but have the wherewithal to bear their criticism and their ridicule. And when our anger is justified, may we be just as quick to forgive those who repent of their offenses. May those who are strong bear the feelings of the weak, and may those who are vulnerable bear witness to the strength of their empathy. In this body, may we acknowledge that we belong to one another and reconcile with those who attempt to dismantle our mutual purpose. In you, may we strive for restoration, encourage one another, be of one mind, and live in peace. God of justice and mercy, abide with us this day. In the power and love of your eternal name we pray. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announced to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from California, Mr. Takano.
Please join me in saying our nation's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has agreed to Senate Joint Resolution 58, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5, United States Code, of the rules submitted by the Department of Energy relating to energy conservation standards for consumer furnaces, in which concurrence to the House is requested.
The chair will obtain up to 15 requests, 1-minute speeches from each side of the aisle. So what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request the to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
So be.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, farming is more than a profession. It is a true cornerstone of the American society. And no group has had a more significant impact on the evolution of modern society than our hardworking farmers. From the earliest days of our nation's founding, the work ethic and devotion of our producers is what pushed us forward. Before the sun rises, our nation's farmers, ranchers, and foresters have already been hard at work for hours, tending to their fields and caring for their livestock. Providing for our families goes beyond putting food on our tables. It includes clothes on our back, heat in our homes, and fuel for our vehicles. With each harvest, our farm families ensure that America and the world has access to a safe and abundant food supply. American agriculture remains America's backbone, and we must support the families that give us so much by passing an effective 5-year farm bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Michael R. McCormick, the remarkable superintendent of the Val Verde Unified School District, as he embarks on a well-deserved journey into retirement. With over 27 years of dedicated service to the field of education, Michael McCormick's career has been defined by an unwavering commitment to fostering educational excellence and nurturing innovation. Before assuming the role of superintendent, Mr. McCormick served as the Assistant Superintendent for Education Services at Val Verde. And under his stewardship, The district earned numerous awards and accolades owing to his thoughtful and diligent focus that puts students first. From championing STEM education to striving to close the racial education gap for his students, Val Verde has thrived under his guidance. Superintendent Michael McCormick, your dedication to education has left an enduring legacy of inspiration and empowerment. Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for your tireless commitment to excellence in education.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my district in Northern California, there's this catastrophic destruction of the Klamath dams. They're hydroelectric dams that provide clean, CO2-free power for about 70,000 homes. It's reducing the renewable grid that everybody seems to want, eliminating recreational assets, hurting property values, damaging the local economy, and making it tougher on agriculture in the Klamath Basin. You see many of these products right here that are grown in California, 90 to 99% of what America relies upon, even 100%. Some of those same crops are grown in that Klamath Basin. Won't be able to do that much longer if they keep tearing out infrastructure and taking the water away. The removal of these dams currently has released many millions of cubic yards of accumulated silt, which has ruined the water quality, killed hundreds of thousands of fish and the spawning beds they would have laying new smolts in. We've seen even full-size deer getting stuck in this and dying in that mud. Governors of California, Oregon seem willing to ignore these because they think it's a win to tear out the dams. Local farmers, again, are suffering. The project borrowed water from the dams to extend the irrigation system. You won't have that flexibility anymore with that out. You won't be able to grow some of these crops that Americans enjoy and rely upon. So we have this devastation going on, all in the name of the environment, all in the name of saving some fish. In the meantime, they've destroyed and killed hundreds of thousands of fish and will continue to do so with this reckless dam removal that won't end here. It'll keep going. We'll have less hydroelectric power, less stored water, less recreation with this crazy type of thinking. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 moment.
228 days. That is how long it has been since scores of people were violated, maimed, tortured, and killed in Israel. 228 days since 252 people, including children and the elderly, were abducted from Israel into Gaza. Yesterday, I met with 4 of their families. Alex Danzig, a 75-year-old, was taken from kibbutz near Oz. He spent the last 30 years working at Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Center, teaching about the lessons of World War II. Ohad Ben Ami, a dual Israeli-German citizen, was kidnapped from kibbutz Be'eri. Ohad's daughter showed me one of the last photos she has of him, which depicts him being dragged into a van by a terrorist. Shakhed Dahan, I wear a dog tag in his honor, was a 19-year-old IDF soldier killed on October 7th. Footage of his lifeless body being dragged from the tank he drove was shown to me by his family. His body was taken to Gaza, and his family prays for its return so they can give him a proper burial. Matan Angrest, a 21-year-old IDF soldier, also abducted. Status unknown, believed to be alive. He shares a November 28th birthday with his younger sister. This past year was the first time they had ever marked their birthday apart. 228 excruciating days for these families. We must not forget them. Until they are released, I will keep saying their names and standing with their families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate National Emergency Medical Services Week and honor the EMS professionals and paramedics who provide life-saving care across the nation every day. EMS professionals like Nick Olick, Chief of Scott County EMS in my home state of Indiana. Since he started serving in Scott County more than a decade ago, Nick and his team have turned around the Emergency Medical Services Department, and it is now self-funded, saving taxpayer money while also saving lives. This can be a heart-wrenching line of work. Last year, Nick suddenly lost a friend and colleague, and yet still he perseveres. While suffering through his own grief, he continues to respond to calls for service. Nick has also started a community paramedicine program to train future EMS personnel. He's an outstanding medic and an exemplar of the EMS profession. This week, we celebrate every EMS professional across the country as they contend for our communities wherever emergencies happen. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chair, in the mid-20th century, the United States government conducted nuclear weapons development tests in the Southwest, exposing thousands of Arizonans downwind of the test site to ionized radiation from the fallout. Women, men, and children were diagnosed with terrible cancers from the radiation exposure. Many tragically lost their lives. Nearly 25 years ago, Congress attempted to make amends by passing the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, but without congressional action, RECA is set to expire next month, denying Arizona families the compensation they need to pay for health care treatments. The House has an opportunity to act right now to correct this injustice. More than 2 months ago, the Senate overwhelmingly passed the bipartisan RECA Reauthorization Act, a 5-year extension of the program. It mirrors my Downwinders Parity Act by expanding the scope of the RECA's coverage to Arizonans in lower Mojave County who were previously denied compensation. For too long, these downwinders have been left behind and overlooked. I urge my colleagues, give these people the justice they deserve and put this bill to a vote. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize all men and women in uniform who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. Since our nation's founding via the Revolutionary War, more than 1 million Americans have given their lives to protect the freedoms that we hold dear today. Every fallen member of the armed services and their families deserves our deepest expression of gratitude, not only on Memorial Day, but every day. The words of Jesus Christ in John 15:12-13 apply to these heroes most deserving of remembrance when he said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. As we reflect upon the ultimate sacrifice of more than 1 million American service members this Memorial Day, may we also remember the family and friends they left behind. Their pain and grief are unimaginable, tempered only by the joy of their memories and the knowledge that they gave their lives in service to the greatest country the world has ever known. I join other Americans in offering them my prayers and heartfelt appreciation. May God bless them, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to recognize the Rockingham County Baseball League as they celebrate 100 years of America's favorite pastime. Founded in 1924, the Rockingham County Baseball League is the second oldest continuously operating league in the United States. J.R. Polyline Weaver, a sports writer for the Daily News Record, helped organize the league. The effort brought players together from 7 communities across Rockingham County in both spirit and game with a consistent schedule and designated rules. From there, the league would go on to include teams from up and down the Shenandoah Valley. The league has a rich history. It survived the Great Depression, World War II, and integrated with African-American players in the 1950s. RCBL boasts players who went on to play in Major League Baseball and even the National Basketball Association. Today, its fields remain a welcoming place that bring athletes together. Recently, the league's storied history and many accomplishments were highlighted in a new exhibit at the Rocktown History Museum in Dayton. It calls attention to the hard work of players, coaches, fans, and other community members who have shown care toward each other through the common love of baseball. Congratulations to RCBL on the many wonderful seasons they've enjoyed over the last century, and I wish them many more to come. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1243 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 77, House Resolution 1243. Resolved that at any time after adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 4763 to provide for a system of regulation of digital assets by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committees on Agriculture and Financial Services, now printed in the bill, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 118-33, modified by the amendment printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution, shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill as amended shall be considered as the original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. No further amendment to the bill as amended shall be in order except those printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules. Each such further amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such further amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill as amended to the House with such further amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as order on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit. Section 2. At any time after adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill, H.R. 5403, to amend the Federal Reserve Act to prohibit the Federal Reserve banks from offering certain products or services directly to an individual, to prohibit the use of central bank digital currency for the monetary policy and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and amendments specified in this section and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Financial Services, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill as amended shall be considered as the original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. No further amendment to the bill as amended shall be in order except those printed in Part C of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such further amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such further amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill as amended to the House with such further amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as order on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit. Section 3. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 192, to prohibit individuals who are not citizens of the United States from voting in elections in the District of Columbia. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The amendment in the nature of a substitute, recommended by the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as order on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability or their respective designees. And 2, 1 motion to recommit.
The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Last night, the Rules Committee met and produced a rule, H-Res 1247, providing for the House's consideration of several pieces of legislation. The rule provides for H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, to be considered under a structured rule. It provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Additionally, the rule also provides for H.R. 5403, the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, Anti-Surveillance State Act. H.R. 5403 would be considered under a structured rule, and it also provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Finally, the rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 192, a bill which would prohibit non-citizens from voting in elections in the District of Columbia, to be considered under a closed rule. It also provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and in support of the underlying pieces of legislation, beginning with H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, or FIT 21. Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad that the rule provides for consideration of this legislation. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, we've spent countless hours trying to develop a responsible regulatory structure for blockchain technology and digital assets. These conversations have become increasingly necessary as regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission have failed. Instead of developing a targeted and purposeful framework that would promote innovation and protect consumers, they have led with regulation by enforcement action. This approach threatens the United States' leadership in the future of digital assets, a future that could better protect privacy, reduce business costs, and empower more Americans. This flawed approach by the SEC has required congressional action, and FIT 21 is the joint response of the Financial Services Committee and the Agriculture Committee. FIT 21 establishes a framework consistent with existing law, but also appropriate for the digital assets in question and their unique characteristics. First, there is no clear current market structure for the regulation of digital assets in the United States. The SEC has merely been regulating by enforcement action. This leaves digital asset innovators and consumers to play a guessing game. This not only stifles innovation, it lends itself to the SEC picking winners and losers. Meanwhile, there's currently no way for digital asset commodities to be registered or regulated by the CFTC. Chair Gensler has repeatedly said most digital assets are securities. However, by his own admission, we know that not all digital assets are securities. In fact, it's estimated that 70% or more are commodities. This is among the most important reasons for the passage of FIT 21. The SEC does not regulate commodities. It regulates securities. The CFTC does not regulate securities. It regulates commodities. The advent of digital assets, which can be either securities or commodities, has created a regulatory black hole that FIT 21 seeks to remedy. By defining digital asset commodities and securities and creating a clear regulatory market structure, FIT 21 protects consumers and provides the regulatory clarity for digital asset developers to innovate. The framework offered by FIT 21 will give clear guidance to regulators and thus allow consumers to better judge digital assets for themselves, avoid scams, reduce instances of data theft, and lessen the potential for market manipulation. FIT 21 is good for our constituents and good for the country. I encourage all of us to support this important legislation. Moving on to H.R. 5403, the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, Anti-Surveillance State Act. I'm a proud original co-sponsor of H.R. 5403 because I share the concerns of many of my colleagues about the consequences of a Federal Reserve Bank digital currency and what that could mean for our constituents and their privacy. If issued, a government-controlled CBDC would give federal bureaucrats the ability to track every transaction Americans make, as well as the ability to block any transaction they so choose. This would be an unprecedented level of surveillance in the daily lives of everyday Americans, and we should all be concerned about the potential threats to individual rights and privacy. A CBDC would give the government the power to shut off access to payments and freeze the bank accounts of law-abiding citizens and institutions for political reasons, just like we saw with the Canadian trucker protests or with Operation Choke Point. I hope all of my colleagues will join me in standing against the creation of a central bank digital currency by supporting this bill. Finally, this rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 192, a bill which would prohibit non-citizens from voting in the elections in the District of Columbia. Americans are rightly concerned with election integrity. Free and fair elections are essential to any democracy. We all agree on that. What we should also agree on is that non-citizens voting in elections undermines confidence in elections. It's why the District of Columbia's Local Residents Voting Rights Amendment Act is so objectionable. It allows non-citizens to vote in D.C. elections, including illegal immigrants and foreign agents. It goes without saying that these individuals in particular have interests that are at odds with our own. They literally represent the interests of other countries, including countries hostile to the United States. Why would we want to allow Russian or China or any foreign agent to vote on policies that impact the U.S. Capitol? It defies logic, but that is exactly what D.C. has inspired to do. My colleagues might ask why we even have an interest in the affairs of local laws in this respect. The answer is quite simple. D.C. has a unique and constitutional relationship with the United States Congress. A lack of confidence in American elections anywhere threatens the confidence in American elections everywhere. It is incumbent upon us to protect the integrity of D.C. elections when the district's elected officials fail to do so, when they allow non-citizens and people with loyalty to other countries to vote. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to consideration of these three important pieces of legislation and urge the passage of this rule. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Indiana reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentlelady from Indiana for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, there's really not much to say. If you were to listen to my friend on the other side, you'd think that these bills are going to change the world the second the ink dries, but they're not. This is just another week of wasted time. More of the same from the Republican leadership here in Congress that is completely out of touch with what the American people actually care about. H.R. 192 is another GOP attempt to meddle in D.C. politics. They spend more time worrying about Washington, D.C. than they do about their own constituents. And it's astounding to me that the party that claims to care about small government and local control wants to have the federal government tell local leaders here in D.C. how to run their local elections. Apparently, they're for local control unless it's local control by Democrats, in which case, never mind. And to hear anybody on the Republican side talk about election integrity is rich, especially from a party that is filled with election deniers. We are also here to consider H.R. 4763, a bill that provides an upper hand to the crypto industry instead of meaningfully addressing gaps in digital asset regulation. And finally, we will meet on H.R. 5403, a bill that prevents the U.S. from exploring digital currency. Now, I know my friends on the other side of the aisle are afraid of innovation, but 130 countries representing 98% of global GDP are looking into digital currency. Maybe, just maybe, it's something we should look into as well. Unfortunately, I think some of my friends on the other side want to go back to stone tablets. It's our job in Congress to address the privacy concerns, not to bury our heads in the sand and pretend like the world isn't moving forward. Mr. Speaker, it's all stunts instead of solutions, extremism over bipartisanship, and it's really a shame. This narrow majority could have given us a chance to work together in a bipartisan way. But instead, my friends over the other side of the aisle have pandered to their most extreme members over and over and over again. They let the extremists kick out their own speaker. They let the extremists dictate the agenda on the House floor. They let the extremists take down 7 rule votes since January 2023, a stunning indictment of their ability to get anything done. And speaking of indictments, Republicans are skipping their real jobs to take day trips up to New York to try to undermine Donald Trump's criminal trial. No time to work with Democrats, but plenty of time to put on weird matching cult uniforms and stand behind President Trump with their bright red ties and like pathetic props. Maybe they want to distract from the fact that their candidate for president has been indicted more times than he's been elected. Maybe they don't want to talk about the fact that the leader of their party is on trial for covering up hush money payments to a porn star for political gain, not to mention 3 other criminal felony prosecutions he's facing. Now, I understand why my Republican friends want to distract from Donald Trump. They don't want to talk about how Trump had the worst jobs record since the Great Depression, how he sold out our allies and empowered our adversaries. So they bring silly things like this to the floor to deflect blame and distract from the fact that they have no real vision, just division, and no real plans to make life better for the American people. And with that, I reserve my time.
The chair would like to remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities towards presumed nominees for the office of the president. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to note that the bury the head in the sand approach is the very approach that Chairman Gensler has been taking with regard to the regulation of digital assets. Our colleagues seem to be less concerned about getting a regulatory framework for consumer protection and are hurrying to put in a central bank digital currency for digital surveillance. With that, I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Indiana reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a few moments ago, I was admonished for stating the simple fact that the former president was indicted by a grand jury and is on trial in a court of law. That's not my opinion. It's just the truth. So I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, has the chair determined it's unparliamentary to state a fact?
The chair is not in a position to determine the veracity of remarks made on the floor.
Well,
that members must avoid personalities.
Yeah, well, that's unbelievable. Last week during debate, a Republican member of this House said, and I quote, "Watch the former president of the United States being hauled into court day after day with a sham trial," end quote. He wasn't admonished. I just referenced the same trial, and I was. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask a further parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it correct that members of Congress can mention the trial of the presumptive nominee for president, call it a sham, and question the integrity of the judge, but a reference to the mere existence of that same trial without any characterization that's out of order?
The chair will not issue an advisory opinion.
Well, one last parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is this restriction originally founded, at least in part, on the principle in Jefferson's manual that, quote, in Parliament, to speak irreverently or seditiously against the king is against order, end quote? Is that what this is about? I have Jefferson's manual here.
Members must avoid personalities in debates. The chair will direct members to Rule 17 in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual.
Yeah. So it is in fact based on what's in Jefferson's manual. Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump might want to be a king, but he's not a king. He is not a presumptive king. He's not even the president. He's a presumptive nominee. And I know you're trying to do your job and follow precedent, but frankly, at some point, it's time for this body to recognize that there is no precedent for this situation. We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we're being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for president of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
We take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I
but not
demand that
Trump
his
should
words
held
be
accountable.
taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentleman will suspend.
But not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
Indiana, to demand that his words be taken down. The gentleman from Massachusetts will be seated. The clerk will report the words.
It's going to take some time, so let's just hang out here. We got to figure out exactly what the words were. All right. So, Mr. Carl, we're gonna figure out exactly how we want to proceed here. He said stuff that's clearly out of order. She made a timely demand. We're going to get the words back from the official reporters so that the clerk can read them. That's going to take some time. And in the interim, we're going to talk through what the options are to get out of this.